everywhere. GBS.
Very good evening and welcome to The Insight. My name is Eugene Ochieng Kwach, and of course I'll be your host tonight. We delve into the heartbeat of current affairs. This is The Insight. So today we embark on a riveting exploration of the dynamic world of tourism, not just as a form of leisure, but also of sustainable change. Joining us are two distinguished guests who are bringing expertise, different angles. Michael Mugendi, a junior sustainable tourism marketing consultant, and of course we have also Felix Muturi, who is also joining us for this show. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us for this conversation. And of course, you can also find us as 21144 at GBS TV Africa, at Kwach Official. And we have this conversation on sustainable tourism. But even as we talk about sustainable tourism, we also talk about the contributions that actually you guys are making, because you are young leaders in different capacities. And thank you so much for joining us for this particular conversation. Let me just get to hear from you, Michael, even as we begin this conversation, that from where you sit, what do you think is the state of tourism in the country?
Good evening again, Mr. Kwach. I would start with giving regards for the time. Thank you for the good question. Mm-hmm. Thank you for the time that we have on air. A pleasure and a good question. Mm-hmm. One to start with, my name is Michael Mugendi. I am a sustainable tourism consultant. I call myself a junior sustainable tourism consultant. Mm-hmm. In the space of sustainable tourism. I work with an organization which is private sector by the name Sustainable Tourism Africa. Sustainable Tourism Travel and Tourism Africa Limited, which is in Nairobi, and assisting in sustainability consulting and clients follow-up, and also marketing a little. But now our major focus as to which has brought us here is to discuss issues around sustainability. And the first question, as you have stipulated it very well, is what is the state of tourism in Africa before we look at the element of tourism, which is sustainability. Now, tourism in Africa today is doing very well, and actually in the region, I would say, it is in the wake, in the restart, from where we were from COVID time and to now, right now. So right now we're doing very well in terms of arrivals. Though someone could critique and say issues to do with policies and policy implementation for international arrivals, issues to do with taxation and everything. But now I would like to embed my response in sustainability bit, because sustainability is to be looked from three angles. One, the social aspect, economic aspect, and environmental aspect. So looking at this, we call them the triple bottom line. We want tourism to be occurring to give us economic resilience. We want tourism to give us environmental resilience as well, and then the social-cultural bit. We need social equity. So right now, tourism actually is in the wake in Kenya, as you said. Looking at the scope of Kenya, we are far much better. I don't want to bring in comparisons with other countries, but we can be sure tourism in Kenya is doing very much well. I'm actually curious to know how will be the report for the Ministry of Tourism in Kenya be like as compared to how Kenya performed last year in 2023. Because the issues to do with taxation and everything, yeah. But as of now, I would say that we are doing very well. We're doing well. But there are ethical issues that we must look from the lens of sustainability that we must observe. I am in the wake and very much alert with the sustainability trends that are going to guide the industry. in 2024.
Before we talk about the sustainability trends,
Yes.
maybe someone is asking themselves from wherever they are,
Yeah.
what is sustainability in tourism? How is it different from other forms of tourism? And when you guys do or promote sustainable tourism, what is actually different so much from what other people are doing?
Oh, interesting.
Or from the normal tourism,
You know, tourism,
which is not tagged sustainable?
tourism is one of the most interesting industries and the one that is very much good in baptizing names. Yeah. So right now, we are talking about sustainable tourism.
Okay.
Another professional will come and talk about regenerative tourism. Another professional will come and talk about, you know, so many terms around sustainability or responsible tourism,
Okay.
etc. But in generally, we are referring at the same towards the same, you know, aspect and thing. Let me break it down. When we talk about sustainable tourism, what is the difference between other forms of tourism? Of course, there are so many forms, and everyone would come and try to define it. Sustainable tourism is borrowed from UNWTO definition, which is tourism that is catering for the present and future generations, looking into profiting the world without actually depleting the resources that are there and promoting social equity, and so on and so on. Looking at the triple bottom line, which I said is the environmental, socio-economic, the social aspect, and then the economic aspect, the triple bottom line. And there are some things we call the 7 core areas, which actually define what tourism is, or sustainable tourism is. So this is also again borrowed from the three aspects, which is the social aspect, economic, and then environmental. So in sustainable tourism, we want to say, can every tourism player who is in the industry promote environmental wellness? Can every tourism player promote economic resilience? Can every tourism player in the industry promote, you know, did I say environmental, social, and then economic? So you want to see a balance, and these are the elements that are actually interconnected, and they're actually forming like a baseline towards promoting sustainability. We want to see how will the industry be looking like 100 years to come. So that is how we want the industry to be.
Okay, thank you so much. Mutiri, let me ask you from your eyes, or from wherever you are, from where you sit, do you think that maybe the government or various stakeholders have actually put in adequate resources in matters of tourism or in conservation of wildlife to ensure that we have a sustainable tourism, as he put it? And again, what is the future of tourism from where you sit?
Thank you, Kwach, for the opportunity. Where I come from, it's the urban setup of things, and I deal mostly with urban wildlife. But on the other side, also interacting with the communities. These are indigenous people. And like my friend has just added on sustainable tourism, for me, I would just call it responsible tourism, where visitors who are coming are adding value, or they're adding value to the tourism products that we have in the country. And what you've added is wildlife as a tourism product. It's diversified. You talk about people's culture. It's also a product of tourism. So in terms of what the government is doing, you know, tourism and wildlife conservation, they're very well interlinked, and there are various stakeholders or players in this field, and everyone is investing in resources. There's what the government is putting, there's what the private sector is bringing, and other various donors as well. They are also in the system. So all these brought together, it's what makes the difference. So the government can do a lot beyond putting financial investment. It's more of they support through the policies that they enact. So the political field is also affecting this sector. When I look at the greatest threat, or the threats that are there facing wildlife today, tourism, or what's happening around tourism matters, that could be one of the threats. But then it has to be done sustainably for us to make sure that we are defending these products of tourism, we are protecting them. And like I said, one of them will be people's culture and looking at wildlife as well. So the threats that we have can be solved by using the resources that we are drawing from the tourism business itself, because it's business anyway. So some of the threats that we have today talk of, I would directly delve into the challenges that tourists themselves are bringing into protected areas. People come to the park or protected areas and they are overspeeding. They end up killing animals. We have a lot of road kills happening today. That's one of the threats on wildlife. People are just dumping garbage in the protected areas. And some of these things, we are dealing with them each day. The only way you can do that, it's filling the knowledge gap. Once you do that, people are aware that when I go there to the park, or even when I'm not in the parks, I should be responsible of my own wastes. One of the things the government has done today is banning plastic wastes or plastic bottles into protected areas. You cannot take a plastic bottle into a protected area, which is one of the good ways to making sure that we're protecting the habitats. When I look into the future, and the future of our wildlife, I feel like there's a threat somewhere. Something is wrong. And there are various things that we need to look at and make adjustments, because our wildlife is a threat. When we talk about wildlife, you're talking about the smallest to the biggest. Those you find that in aquatic species, those you find caterpillars, reptiles, snakes, all these. It's all because of our own actions. We are compressing animals' habitats, and which is, it's just basic principle that animals need space for movement. And I will use Nairobi National Park as a case.
Okay.
We've compressed the habitat to a point where today animals are moving out of the park, and they end up killing people's livestock. Call it human-wildlife conflict. And then the people's perspective on wildlife changes to something negative. So what happens is that that conflict itself, if it's not dealt with as early as now, through government encouraging compensation schemes, ensuring that they are monitoring on how human-wildlife conflict is happening and the response is being given, then we are definitely going to lose not just animals, but you also lose that spirit that people had to host or coexist with wildlife. They are no longer going to tolerate wildlife in their private farms, something which is happening today. But at the moment, what I'm seeing, there are great efforts that have been put by the government. Other players are coming in. We are today having new conservation models, talk of conservancies. So we have a promising future, but we have to put in a lot of resources, especially on matters education.
Okay, quite interesting. You're speaking about threats. So many threats that are affecting actually the tourism sector. But even as he speaks about these threats, let me come to you, because you're a junior consultancy, of course, on sustainable tourism. So when you guys work in the sustainable, work for a sustainable tourism, yes, I believe that perhaps you must have certain initiatives that you have to promote sustainable tourism. So maybe you can tell us some of them, that these initiatives that you guys have come up with to ensure a sustainable tourism going forward, so that we can even help to mitigate certain threats that may actually threaten the future of the livestock, generally the wildlife, and in the long run, even the tourism, because tourism, wildlife is very inherent in when you speak about tourism.
Well, interesting. Thank you so much, Coach. I like the perspectives that you're bringing in. Yeah? First, we say when we're talking about sustainability, we are looking into the future. I want to first connect that with the essence of youth and awareness. So first is when we talk about the youth, I want to draw a correlation between the youths and the resilience of the tourism industry. We cannot negate the fact that there are youths that are participating in the tourism space, either as travelers, either as consultants, like myself, either as students, who are practitioners on training and etc. So I want to look at leveraging on awareness, or what you can say, training and awareness for information, so that they can be the champions for sustainability. Yeah?
Yes.
I'm looking at a space where we have youths that are advocating for sustainable policies in the government. Youths who can be able to, meet up and hold continuous dialogues. This can be done even at their levels, at the institutions, in the universities.
Okay.
They can be done in, used by use of social media. They can make these topics be trending to boost sustainability. Yeah, and still on awareness, people sometimes do some things not because they are aware, but out of ignorance. So why don't we, them that have voices, propagate this information to reach people? For example, as he mentioned, the issue of human-wildlife conflicts, there is always an interest of resources. So the government, who is tasked as the major, custodian of wildlife, has interest in wildlife because there is money out of it, there is etc. out of it, but there is this local here, who in their spaces that they are calling their home, it is where people are coming from their own other places, saying that they are tourists. How do we balance this ecosystem? So there comes a deal, and that's where sustainability comes in.
Okay.
So you are visiting someone's place, calling it a home, dressed half naked. Yeah, you get the scenario. And there are some places actually where government has actually banned such practices. Let me move out of wildlife perspectives a little bit and focus on the social aspect, resilience bit of it, and trying to connect it with the youth. Yeah. So you are calling someone is calling this place my home. Yeah. I'm in my home place, doing my herding, checking after my livestock, and there comes fancy people, strange people calling themselves tourists, and they are doing tourist activities and these attractions they are finding in. So I'm trying to look at striking a balance between tourist practices and conservation, and then awareness. How can we make this local be aware of whatever tourism is bringing, and then actually bring them into the table to eat whatever tourism is providing? So that is the only way we are able to curb this. So let make people aware of what tourism benefits is bringing, and then we bring a correlation or a point of converging between the tourists, the host community, and then conservation. It is unless we put conservation at the hands of the people that we are able to find what we are calling sustainability.
Okay.
So we must put awareness, make people aware that conservation requires 1, 2, 3 practices, and then we are able to strike a balance between that, including wildlife. Yes.
Interesting. Actually,
Yes.
when we come back, we're talking about the balance. You're going to maybe tell us what you think actually can be done generally to balance tourism activities and even now maintaining or conserving environment or the sustainability of the biodiversity generally, how we can balance both. Of course, as we delve into what he was actually talking about. Thank you so much. Of course, double 4 is our SMS line. Here we are talking about sustainable tourism. And of course, I have these 2 guests joining me for this conversation. Thank you so much. Please stay put as we continue this conversation just in a jiffy.
So through the 4 gospel books, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, John, we can know the heart of Jesus in depth.
그리고 우리가 속히 느끼는 그 예수님을 성경을 통해 느낄 수 있어서 너무 감사합니다.
And the Jesus that we can feel him through the scriptures, and I'm very thankful about that. Jesus Christ came to this earth for our
우리 죄를
sins.
지셨고
He carried our sins,
십자가에 못 박혀 주고 죄의 형벌을 당하셨고
and he was crucified, and he received the punishment for sins,
무덤에 들어가셨다가
and he was put into the tomb
사흘 만에 부활하셨습니다.
and resurrected in 3 days.
이것이 우리가 말하는 복음입니다.
This is the gospel that we speak.
예수님께 우리 죄를 위해 죽으신 이야기,
about how Jesus died for our sins, the purpose of Jesus being
우리
crucified.
죄를 담당하기 위하여 십자가에 못 박혀 죽으셨습니다.
He was crucified to pay for our
그래서
sins.
예수 십자가에 못 박혀 죽으심으로 우리 죄가 분명히 씻어졌는데
And through Jesus being crucified, clearly our sins have been washed clean.
참 안타깝게도 많은 사람은 여전히 죄인이라고 말합니다.
However, unfortunately, many people still say that they are sinners.
There are no limits to what you can and will become if you believe in your dream. You need to learn to choose your friends wisely. You need to match your energies. You need to learn to delegate. Personally, I am good in coordination, but somebody else is good in social media or communication. I will not be found suffering to do social media work. Why? Because somebody else will do that work much better than I. So that is what we've leveraged on, the strength and power in each other.
Welcome back to the Insight. Of course, we continue with this conversation. And we were talking about the conservation of the environment. But even as we are talking about this, we also talk about the balance now between the biodiversity and even the conservation of the park. Let's talk about maybe the Nairobi National Park generally and its contribution even to tourism from where you sit as the friends, as the coordinator for Friends of Nairobi National Park.
Okay. There is. I would say that there are a lot of players in Nairobi National Park, and it's such a unique ecosystem. Actually, it's the only protected area in a capital city globally. It means nowhere else where you'll go and in a short time drive, less than 30 minutes, you are in a protected area and enjoying the great view of the animals that are there, the nature itself, and you know, we say it's a green city itself. That's what Nairobi is, and it's a safe haven for all forms of wildlife. Among the big five, we have 4 of them. It's only the elephants that are missing in Nairobi National Park. It's because of the size of the park itself. 117 square kilometers cannot support the needs of elephants. And the other thing, it's we have rhinos at Nairobi National Park. In fact, it's a breeding spot for rhinos, black rhinos mostly. And when the number rises to, against the carrying capacity, then the rhinos can be translocated in other places in the country. I would talk about threats to showcase the balance between conservation and tourism itself. And again, conservation is such an expensive venture. It's not easy to run all these things. That's why you need visitors coming to the park. They pay that revenue. Then you use that to pay the people that are working there. You use that to fund research. You use that to manage the ecosystems because it involves a lot. There's mathematics into that. There's a lot of science involved in that. And Nairobi National Park itself, it's highly threatened. Politics, issues of land grabbing, and that's the core objective of my organization. It's advocacy, defending the park. The greatest threat that we have today, talk about pollution itself, which is sewage pollution. You know, sewer flowing into the dams that have water that animals are drinking. And you need to put in a lot of resources for you to tackle such challenges. And one other thing which I've noted, it's when people visit the park themselves, may it be young people or international visitors, there are various ways they do for them to support a space like Nairobi National Park. We also have corporates in the country, local corporates here in Nairobi that are supporting Nairobi National Park in various ways. One of them is people donate. People can help you in advocating against such practices as land grabbing, like I mentioned. There are others who have also highly supported on the side of dealing with sewage and plastic pollution. So we have young people as well coming to support us on park cleanup activities matters, young Kenyans who are loving the park. And we are taking advantage of learning institutions. Those who are neighboring Nairobi National Park, they usually come on regular basis to help us collect all the litter that is around. So unless we all choose and decide to do such things, and Kenyans themselves owning these spaces, then sustainability will not make sense. It has to start from their mind. And that's why we target learning institutions. And because when you speak to young children, whatever you shared with them, it sits in their mind. Even when they grow up to be engineers and doctors and whatever they become, they will be thinking sustainably.
Thank you so much. Let me just ask you this question, because you've initially mentioned about the park being compressed to the extent that they are invading other personal property that belongs to other people. Now, this actually affects negatively the relationship between now the wildlife and the people. But there's a pertinent question, because it's very important when we involve the community where these parks are, or where generally we are conserving this wildlife. Or maybe you can tell us, if we reflect on community engagement, like how does it play a role in sustainable development for tourism generally around national parks, maybe? And maybe you can tell us some of cases in point that you guys have maybe engaged the community to ensure that there is a sustainable tourism generally, so that even when the wildlife invades the community, then actually it can help, they know how to maneuver better, so as not to create the chaos that we have experienced in the past.
One thing I would say is local people, indigenous people, they are a key stakeholder in matters tourism, matters conservation. You cannot do anything without them. Even if you tried it, you would just fail. So anything that touches wildlife, unless if you involve the whole community that is around, local leaders, the schools that are around, and the young people from those communities, and we involve them in these ways, because they are the ones that are bearing the cost of living with wildlife. They are losing a lot, but they're also gaining. Up until you draft a mechanism where these people are deriving benefits from living, or from the fact that they are living with wildlife in their farms and the park is next to them, then whatever you tell them is not going to make sense. So one thing is there are women there, because talk of the Maasai people, maybe there are still some of the communities that still have the notion of women can do this, men can do this. You know, there is a division of responsibilities. And there is one thing that women have been doing, and it's really empowering them. It's the project on beadswork.
Okay.
And these Maasai, shukas, etc., all these things. And at the southern side of Nairobi National Park, and I would encourage Kenyans who are watching this, whenever you visit the park, go down to Nairobi National Park. There's a picnic site there, hip hop holes, and then ask the people who are there where they can purchase Maasai attires. They are just very close, adjacent to Nairobi National Park. That's one of the ways that the park has developed and ensured that the community is also benefiting from the visitors who are coming to the park, because we said it's responsible tourism. That's what sustainable tourism is. Okay. Then the other thing, it's the community with all these increasing human-wildlife conflict, and actually in Nairobi National Park we say it's human-lion conflict. Okay. It's the most occurring. And with lions, we saw what happened in Amboseli National Park, where the communities came out, politics into it, they killed 7 lions, which was such a huge loss. We haven't let that happen here in Nairobi National Park, because what we are doing is there's a system called Lion Light. These lights flash at night. It's like that system of car hazard. And then by flashing, when an animal sees a boma with livestock with such flashing lights, the lion thinks that someone is protecting that boma. So it's dangerous for me to go there. So we are purchasing these lion lights, and then we are donating to the communities. So which is one of the ways to ensure the peaceful coexistence with wildlife. And one funny scenario is I was speaking to a community person one day, and I asked him in Swahili, Simba wasumbua huko sana siku hizi. And what he told me is that watusumbui, tunaishi na wao. So it was, I had to withdraw my words, because what he told me was really encouraging, that these people have gotten used to live with these animals, and it's for us to promote that spirit so that they can be there for future generations. Let them not treat these animals as if they are enemies, because they're used to live with them. One other scenario, it's there is a problem of zoonotic diseases, where diseases are being transmitted from wildlife to livestock. So in case such a thing has been identified, of course there is a, maybe you call it a vaccination program, which happens at the communities level. So there are various ways also, I'm seeing Kenya Wildlife Service as well, working with the schools. They are donating learning materials to schools. So there are various ways the government is trying itself, I'm not speaking for the government, but we ourselves as stakeholders and supporters, and because we are partners with the government. So those are some of the things that we are employing to make sure that the community is brought close.
Okay. Michael, let me ask you a question, because you initially talked about taxation in tourism as a very critical issue that is even affecting sustainable tourism. And well, there is also conversations around the increase of park fees and such things, because of course we understand when the economy, as generally things are increasing, and so even the park fees have actually increased. So when, from where you sit, and because there's also the conversations around proper management of these parks, of this wildlife, or wherever this wildlife are, they need to be properly managed. And so it is through these fees that actually they get to be managed properly. But even so, as a very critical issue, because it's affecting wildlife, you compare maybe tourism in Kenya to other parts which actually have got lower fees, are charging lower, then theirs is quite blooming. Case in point, Tanzania, you compare it to Kenya. What do you think? Do you think that Kenya's tourism may be affected much with this? And generally, what do you think about taxation and even conversation around increase of these fees?
Interesting, and thank you so much for that good question. We look at it from two angles, or I will look at it from two angles. One, from the positive side. When there is, of course, increase in park fees, or we call it conservation fees, we expect income or revenue to the government, which will translate directly to the money that is going to, or the financial resources that is going to conservation. That's notwithstanding. I look at it from the negative side, where it will actually, on a very small scale, discourage international arrivals. But most likely, it is going to, reduce in a domestic tourism. So sustainability says we should encourage domestic travel. That not to mean we discourage international arrivals, because it is where a lot of money is. It is from international arrivals that we get a lot of income, a lot of inbound expenditure. International guests spending more here. They are that expensive dollar, yeah? And that is what we want. So now, a case in scenario is in the conservation areas that are not under the national government. For example, some of the national reserves that we are here, and we know them, they have actually tripled their conservation fees, and some other hidden expenses or fees that have been actually instituted to others that do not shout too much, like investors inside of conservation. Let me ask you, for example, how do you expect a new investor inside of, say, Masai Mara National Reserve to pay a park fees of 3 million shillings? And there are some others that I may not want to mention. And actually expect them to break even. That's close to impossible. Some of them are actually closing. Let me say, because I was involved personally in Masai Mara for a certain workshop. As of now, there are 49 lodges inside of Masai Mara National Reserve. And which are, some of them are doing very well. You could say they are doing very well. and and majority of them are actually struggling to break even. Yeah, some of them are actually preferring alternative locations to go and relocate to, you know. And in sustainability, we are saying we don't want them to leave their marks.
Yes.
We don't want them to notice where, you know, where they were. We want them to have those temporary structures and etc. Sometimes they are expensive undertakings, and well, that notwithstanding, is a good scenario. That's how the industry is, and that's how the issue of inflation is a global issue. We cannot again start to blame the government so much, in as much as they have that role to play. It is not only tourism that is being affected. Even other industries like manufacturing and etc., they are facing the challenge. So it is a challenge we must accept, and our competitors, as you mentioned, Tanzania, are finding their way, a soft spot. But I will say this is not a problem that has started today. Even during the times when the movie Out of Africa was being shot, you know, produced, it was supposed ideally to be produced in Kenya because they were mirroring the Kenyan, you know, Kenyan heritage, which is Masai Mara National Reserve.
Yes.
You know, mirroring the life of Karen Blixen. There's a former, I mean, you know Karen Blixen, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. It's an issue that started long ago. They were unable to, or rather the fees they were being charged were so high, and they went and did a replica elsewhere. But someone would actually think it was done in Kenya. So it's an issue that has been there for long. And the issues of the government sometimes tightening the rope so much until investors sometimes do not find it, you know, easy to come to Kenya. It is not only visitors that are being frightened or scared away, also investors. And actually, we tell you for free, the harassment sometimes that we are hearing of international arrivals, sometimes that voice is going loud, and so far it is reaching even potential travelers who had marked Kenya as their potential or their preferred destination, and they are trying to explore alternatives. Some of them are even going to an extent of landing to our neighbors, obtain an international single visit, I mean, as an East African visa, and then they will channel to Kenya by other means, except by landing over air, because sometimes these are some of the issues that are there in the industry, and our loved investors and business operators are facing them. So yes, it's a challenge that we must admit it is there, and probably we'll continue with it. But we must advocate for policies that are favoring the industry, and so on. Yes.
Yes, you were speaking about, coming back to you, Mr. Michael, but Felix, let me come to you. You're talking about certain lights that actually can be used actually to somehow maybe conserve the lions somehow, or rather to scare them away from maybe moving to certain areas. And that speaks about technology. When you talk about technology, using of technology in conservation of maybe wildlife, and someone will ask maybe, because even as we talk about sustainable tourism, we understand that it is very important for us to conserve. They actually go hand in hand. It's working together. So which of these other technologies maybe that actually are being employed in ensuring that we have the wildlife, to actually ensure wildlife conservation? Which ones maybe that actually have been employed by you guys, or that are actually being employed even as we speak to ensure wildlife conservation?
I think maybe the first question would have been what threats are there which need technological advancements or innovation coming in. And because today it's about sustainability, of course, we are talking about the impact that visitors are bringing into these protected areas. As much as we want numbers flowing into our parks, there must be some regulations that visitors should follow. We don't want you to come to the park over speeding. We don't want you to come to the park and then you're just dumping waste anywhere. You're having parties at picnic sites and then you leave your rubbish inside the park at a picnic site. We have to educate them. And one other challenge, it's I would say overcrowding. Where visitors come and then there is a lion sighting somewhere, you'll find hundreds of cars surrounding just one single lion, which affects the mindset of that animal. If it was feeding, would continue feeding. If it was in hunting modes, it definitely leaves the hunting motion, the mission of hunting and changes to other things. So we don't want things that comes in the park and then they change animals' behavior. One, it's that today, overspeeding, the only way this can be dealt with, of course, we have volunteers, people who are members of Friends of Nairobi National Park. They are devoting their time, their vehicles and everything, and they're helping in monitoring who is it that is overspeeding and misbehaving in the park. And then we have some cameras that have the capability to take photos from a distance, and then that can be reported to Kenya Wildlife Service, and Kenya Wildlife Service can respond using the policies that they have, the law that is there, to either fine that particular visitor. One other thing which could be most efficient is using speed guards. Then you're able to monitor the speed of a moving car, because there is a speed limit when you're in the park, 30 kilometers per hour or 40 at max. So if we find out that you are overspeeding, at least we have some evidence with the speed gun, then we are able to tell that this person overspeeding, and then you can be fined. The other thing, apart from the use of lion lights, there's also another thing with the lions that are moving out of the park, which is their lion collars. It's a collar put at a lion's neck, and then it's a GPS gadget. You're able to monitor the movement of this animal, which is able to tell you how is this animal behaving. And when it's moving out of the park, then there are community rangers. You notify them that there is an animal which has moved out of the park, has already crossed the boundary. Could you respond before it gets to community bombers? That is something that we want to introduce into Nairobi National Park. It's been done there before, but lion collars are a bit expensive. It's an expensive venture, but it's doable. Any other thing on advancing on technologies, maybe also looking at what are the needs of the visitors. So we need to enhance the visitors' experience, because you want to give someone a reason to revisit that park. We're looking at the status of sanitation into Nairobi National Park. These are washrooms and other facilities. And today, as we speak, there are no sanitation facilities for people who are disabled. And then the hygiene of these sanitation spaces, something that we also want to encourage the government to improve on. Or we take advantage of the people who are neighbors of Nairobi National Park, people that love Nairobi National Park, and then put a contribution into supporting such an initiative. So these are some of the things that, if done, make sure that people have a reason to revisit the parks. And when animals go out of the park, quick responses can be made. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And actually, you've talked about that much. And one question that I wanted to ask you even before I move to him is when you talk about wildlife conservation, there's a link between wildlife conservation and sustainable tourism. Maybe to someone who does not understand generally what now wildlife conservation and sustainable tourism, how are they linked? Maybe just in few words, kindly.
The reason why wildlife falls into tourism, it's because it's a tourism product. I don't think there is any other reason that makes it fit into the tourism category. As a tourism product, it has to be protected because it's adding a lot of value into our GDP. Again, it should be protected. It's our heritage. Wildlife is our heritage. It's who we are. We are used to living with these animals. But then things are changing. And these animals, they deserve a space, just like we do as humans. I'll just use one illustration. A friend asked me one day, between me and a zebra, who should be living in a city? Until today, I'm looking for the right response I can give to that person. But we are all interconnected, and we all have to live together. But then the sustainability aspect comes in, where now you want to give these animals a space and also consider humanity. So that's the sustainability aspect. It's about the future of the animals and the future of humanity. Yeah.
And that will actually even ask you a question, that will even pose a question that, which is more important? But anyway, there is a conversation for another time. Let me come to you. So there has been a heightened conversation around climate change. And when we talk about climate change, this focus on climate change globally, the pertinent question is that how can now the tourism industry, because he has talked about conservation of wildlife as friends of Nairobi National Park. Now, how can the tourism sector ensure that they contribute to carbon reduction and maybe generally environmental sustainability, even as we talk about a sustainable tourism?
Interesting, Mr. Kwach, for that good question. Quickly to dive into it or to delve into it is that we will be not doing ourselves justice to start, eluding the effects of climate change. Is all visible, is all legible. We can read it from, meet a person, a local community member, doing whatever they are doing for income. You can read their faces and see, you can calculate. This is an effect of climate change and etc. Go to whatever they are doing in their chambers. Look at what is happening with the El Ninos right now. We've never seen a January that has rains, and not just rains, intense rains. So there are so many and they are visible. Now, looking at climate change, and in our topic today, what we are discussing, the role of youths, I'm looking at youths being proactive and innovative enough, for example, in what we said, advocacy. And I'm looking at youth being involved in dialogues, and thirdly, youth being, this is so much pertinent, yeah? Youth being innovative to climate issues, because we've left climate issues to people who are now lobbying money using climate, because there are actually two things that you mentioned in this world today, and you get a lot of funding, mention climate change, you get a lot of money from MMF, from whichever funding bodies and etc. So we're trying to bring climate change in the context of tourism, and we will see the urge. So I'm looking at a youth who is coming and say, in this mobile phone, I will be able to open up, open an app, and I will read eco-friendly tips of a traveler. I will open an app and I will read about, carbon trading or carbon reduction tips, such innovations. I'm not only looking for a student or for a youth who is doing tourism-related studies. No. Can we integrate even the curriculum to, enlighten the engineer, that ICT student, to be able to focus all our efforts towards climate change? Is that possible? Can we tell that civil engineer, when you are creating or you are constructing a road, and there is that tree there, an indigenous tree, by the way, that's another issue I'll talk about. When you meet an indigenous tree on the road, actually straight to the road, and they say there are many, do you want to spare them? Do you think, as an engineer or a civil engineer who is in practice, do you think those trees have something to play, a role to play in solving or curbing climate change? That's questions that we should be asking, and integrate the youth into these things. So when we talk about sustainability, actually, is a thing or is a burden that can and should be carried by, many other people. Yeah, it's possible to enlighten and everyone to put their effort. Come, even yourself, you are in media and communication. You can carry the burden of spreading the gospel. You have airspace, or what is called airtime. Yeah, I'm looking at all of us doing this and trying to bring an intersection between conservation and professionalism, especially through the youth that are actually now doing, their trainings for different professions. So that would be the interconnection that I put between the youth and conservation. So we must bring an amalgam or an amalgamation of all these fields and players, bring them towards conservation. So I believe.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. It has been a nice time having a conversation with you about sustainability of the tourism sector. And from the look of things, you're very young men doing this great work outside there. And of course, we are so very grateful, because we know that the future is in great hands. Thank you so much, Michael and Felix. And let me just give you time to give a parting shot, even as we come to the end of this conversation. Let me start with you, Felix.
Sure. I want to appreciate GBS for giving us the opportunity to speak to Kenyans. And by the way, also invite Kenyans to visit the protected areas. We have a lot of them here in the country. And even before the increment of the park fees, try visit Nairobi National Park. It's very close to us. And when you visit, come support us, do something for the park, because there's a lot that young people can contribute to, corporates can do, schools as well. So everyone has an opportunity to serve into the conservation field. No one has been blocked out, no one is limited.
Michael.
We continue doing this because there's always a platform for everyone.
Michael.
Thank you so much again, Mr. Kwach. Thank you for the opportunity. I would like to give my parting shot in a very brief manner. I would say everyone, the cake is too big in the tourism industry. Everyone can have their share. But even as we have our shares, can we make sure that we are not depleting it for our future? Will your children be able to do that hiking you're doing, or all the hills and mountains will just be, cultivated and etc. So let's, in as much as we want to eat from the tourism cake, let us ensure its resilience, and that is what sustainability is.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. My name is Eugene Kwach. Of course, we come to the end of this conversation, the insight that comes to you every Friday from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Here we have conversations around current affairs as we get to delve deeper and dig deeper into issues that, of course, concern you, from politics, business, economy, policies, and all matters that concern you here on The Insight. With me, Eugene Ochieng Kwach. Until next Friday, well, let's meet next time. You can find us at Kwach Official at GBS TV Africa, 244. And of course, on behalf of everyone that has made this happen, we wish you a very good night.
Everywhere. GBS.